Welcome to the LivBtr podcast. I'm Erica Spiegelman, addiction and wellness specialist and author, and along with me, I have my co-host, Jay Siano, a New York-based serial entrepreneur, business scaling expert, and wellness aficionado. We are here to inspire, encourage growth, and most importantly, to live better. Welcome to the LivBtr podcast. Today we have on Wyatt Ewing, who is the CEO of Ice Barrel. He's here to talk to us about cold plunge therapy and so much more. Welcome to the show, Wyatt.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
So Wyatt, you're getting the whole world cold, man, and I appreciate you for that. So why don't you explain to everybody exactly what Ice Barrel is doing, and then we'll go into the backstory.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ice Barrel is on a mission to help people get colder and feel better. We're making the most accessible and effective cold therapy solutions just to help people get access to cold therapy across the world. We're making really innovative ice barrels, receptacles for you to plunge into. We have a lot of technology coming out with a really unique water chiller and filtration system that's going to be really small, compact, but the most powerful chilling technology in this application in the world. We also have a really cool app that we're rolling out in just a few short months. And it's just an exciting time here at Ice Barrel. We just partnered. We're the official cold therapy sponsor of CrossFit, which is super exciting. So a lot of big things on the horizon.
Amazing. That's amazing.
That's huge, man. Yeah. So Wyatt and I met at our collective friend Brian Maz's last HPLT event where I had the honor of speaking at, and you know, it's amazing just how much, you know, cold therapy has changed my life and so many other people. It's, you know, I put a little, you know, stuff on my social media platforms, and it's all anybody wants to talk about. I'm sure that you experienced that times a million, Wyatt, being like the face of Ice Barrel. So can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to create the Ice Barrel?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you said that because it's wild to see how far we come. Back in 2017, when I started Ice Barrel, like nobody was taking ice baths. Nobody was posting about it. And I was like the weird guy in Denver, Colorado, trying to get people to take ice baths after their workouts at these like CrossFit gyms. But yeah,
now everybody's trying to be your friend. But the funny part is, I know the story. You know, you had a chance to really tell me the detailed story, and it's such an amazing entrepreneurship story. So give it to us, because you know, I don't know if anybody's really heard your backstory.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background was originally in corporate aviation. I'd help people buy and sell corporate jets. So that's what I was doing. Before that, I had a really early start to life, got married super young, financially independent by like 16, 17, living out on my own at a young age, just due to some unfortunate family circumstances. And just always had this mindset of like survival and just grinding, clawing my way out of the pit, and just working on achieving this never ending cycle of success. And I got to this like pinnacle, especially early in my 20s, selling airplanes. It was a very unique, niche market, very high stress. And I mean, you eat what you kill, and very competitive. And it was especially a brutal industry based on my upbringing as well, which was also very survivalist. And just had really high anxiety, but I just always called my anxiety stress. I'm just stressed. I'm just stressed. I'm not impatient. I'm not anxious. I'm just stressed. But at the end of the day, like I had really bad anxiety. And I got to this place where I just experienced a lot of burnout in my early to mid 20s. And there was this day where I was walking into this gym and just had just a rough couple of months in the aviation world. My anxiety was peaked. I wasn't showing up great for my family or myself. And this guy walked up to me in a gym, and he kind of looked at me sideways, and he literally, his words, he said, "You look like shit." And I was like, that's so rude. Like, that's not how you should introduce yourself to people. And he was like, he was like so nice at the same time. He encouraged me to take a cold shower and to try some breathing exercises, just very basic box breathing. And I was reluctant, but I was also desperate because I was trying like meditation and diet and exercise and like tapping and all these different like anxiety remedies or stress management tools, and nothing was working. And I was at a really dark place. Like I can't emphasize that enough when I'm trying to like share how much of a dark place I was in. I was having some like really hard conversations at night with my wife and like trying to sleep. And like, it was just like kind of like tormented, just from like this grinding and this past trauma, and just trying to deal with life was just a lot, especially like I got an early start to life. So I started buying properties when I was 20, and like my life just like expanded. And then, but inwardly it was just like imploding. It was the opposite. So I went home that day, took the cold shower. And when I got out of the cold shower, I was like, wow, I feel like I'm where my feet are, which kind of sounds silly, but like I feel present in this moment. And I liken it back to this idea when you have like a head cold and 5 days later you're feeling better and you're like, man, I forgot what it feels like to feel good again. Like I forgot what this feels like. And that's like what it was, but on like a big scale for me, like this moment of presence, like I haven't lived here in a long time. And I just started going back to that. I started routinely taking cold showers. And my physiology started changing. My outlook on life started changing, my mood, my behavior. And it was like this, even though like nothing changed in my circumstances, this perspective shift happened within me. And one of the things that I developed for sure through the practice of cold exposure was this like courage to face, the challenges in my life and the realities of my life. And I became very passionate. Like I started showing up better for my wife, and I now have 3 kids, but at the time I only had 1. And I was more patient with my daughter. And that was something I was like hyper aware of. Like I'm so impatient as a father. But through cold therapy, like I developed this capacity of patience and presence with my daughter that like I was so grateful for. And my wife was the first to notice. She told me, she was like, you're so much more patient in life. And I was like, I feel more patient and I feel more peaceful. So it was such a huge shift from where I was living at like 6 months later that I was like, I want to stay in this state, and the work that I'm doing and the way that I'm living does not facilitate that. So I literally, one day at work, it was literally like that extreme. One day at work, I called my wife sitting at my desk. I was like, I need to quit. I need to go find a new path, and I need to bring cold therapy to the world. And I literally cut the parachute cord. I went into my boss's office and I just quit. And I left all my aviation deals behind. And it was the scariest thing I ever did. I got home that day. I felt extremely liberated, thinking that like it's going to be easy from here. And it was not easy. It was even harder because that's when the work began. So then I started like trying to figure out how I'm going to bring cold therapy to the masses and make it accessible and effective. And at that time, the only thing people were using was the shower and the bathtub and maybe a stock tank, right, to take an ice bath. And so that's when I like buckled down and started innovating a product based on the body's natural response in the fight or flight mode. How do we keep the spine upwards? How do we keep the lungs and chest open? Like I didn't like the idea of lying down in a bathtub. It's counterintuitive to nature. Like creatures don't go into the fight or flight response and then lie down. They go into the fight or flight response and they stay engaged, even if they're in the freeze, right? They're just engaged. And so I wanted to recreate that experience to keep it meditative, to keep it in like yourself in a state of like my body's in a controlled position. I'm in the most comfortable position for an uncomfortable environment. Like those were all the things that went into this. So I started innovating a product. I got a prototype. Thankfully, my wife, she's great at taking pictures. I'm not. So she took some pictures of like the very beginning days that at the time I didn't think anything of, but I'm so thankful to have them now. She literally has the picture of when I was unloading the first 2 ice barrels ever made. And those were the prototypes were made out of white oak, custom made out of Napa Valley, very unique product. And they were really
how do we get
expensive.
those? How do we get those?
Right?
Those are like, those are worth something.
Those
Wait,
are
Wyatt,
the
I have so
relics.
many.
Yeah. So,
Have a question really quick. So I am,
Yeah.
I have never tried an ice bath or cold therapy. I haven't even really tried a cold shower unless like our heat was out for some reason and had to take a quick cold shower. But so I've never, and I'm very much in the wellness space, and I work with people that are in recovery. I'm a licensed addiction counselor. So I am very open, and I am also super impressed by all these ways that we could heal. And I've seen Jay's, journey, and, I think he's probably one of the only people closest to me that does that. So it's kind of been cool to watch him. But I am like scared to death of cold. Like I hate the cold. Like it's something where it's intrinsically like, I just don't enjoy it. And I love hot baths. So I'm somebody that like really enjoys the hot therapy, and I literally take a bath daily. It's like part of my wellness routine. And so there's something in me that is curious and wants to try, because I want to just, I want to experience it. But just for your advice for people out there that are a little bit weary of it and yet would benefit so much from it, what do you say to us?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's totally fair. We've lived in a culture that tells us like, if you go outside, you're going to catch a cold. We literally call it a cold, right? And that's actually a little wives' tale. Like the weather outside does not give us a cold. Right. But we've grown up in this culture. I mean, it's so funny. Like even my wife and I like still have the conversation today. I'm like, the kids don't need jackets, send them outside. And she's like, put a hat on them. But yeah, so like, I understand where like the intrinsic reservation comes from, because we kind of have this idea that cold is bad and hot is good. And I mean, if you think about it,
it's just uncomfortable. It's just uncomfortable. Like who wants to be like shivering, freezing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, hot water is a new invention. We've only had it for about 100 years. So like relative to like where we are in humanity, like hot water is like innovative and great. So yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. A great way to start, like turn the shower as hot as you can handle it, and then go to as cold as you can handle it. And you're in control because you have the lever, and keep going back and forth, back and forth. That is a great way to start acclimating to the cold, and it's invigorating. And you still have the security of, as soon as I turn it hot, I'm going to be fine again. Right. So that's a great place to start. I've given out thousands and thousands of ice baths, and I have never had anybody get out of the ice bath saying that was horrible. They wish they never did it. Everybody comes out exhilarated, no matter who you are, because your body is going to have a chemical response. Your nervous system's going to fire, and it's extremely euphoric and sensational. So I totally understand the reservations. It's one of those things where just give it a try. Even if you get in for 20 seconds, 10 seconds, you're going to have a great experience for sure.
Yeah. No. And I'm excited. Like I'm somebody that's like, I want everybody to try everything, and then you decide what you like. But so for people that are wondering, like how many times a day, when you say it really changed your physiology and, really helped like propel you in a different direction, is that once a day? How long do you do it? What do you think, like, what is like your prescription for somebody that is doing it now? Like how?
So my protocol right now today is different than when I first started. I was definitely in a state of desperation. So I was doing cold showers 1 to 2 times a day, because it was like, it was working. So I would just keep going. And I'm my personality type, I'm very much all in or all out. So when I was doing it, I was like fully dedicated. Now that was probably a little bit extreme. Now I'm doing it about 5 times a week. I'll sit in the sauna for 10 to 20 minutes, and then I'll go in the ice for 2 to 6 minutes, somewhere in there.
2 to 6 minutes.
Yeah. And just once a day. Now the water temperature, like kind of a misconception here, it doesn't have to be that cold to get the benefits. You're getting 90% of the benefits under 60 degrees. So as you go down to like 40 degrees, you're only getting like 10% more benefit. So it just has to be,
ice. You don't need the ice.
Yeah, you don't need to add a ton of ice. I mean, a lot of times the ambient air temperature with the temperature of the water coming out of the tap is sufficient to get started. Now, over time, you are going to totally build up a tolerance, and you're going to want to creep the temperature down. And that's when you can just start adding ice or connect a water chiller.
Cool.
Yeah. So you were just describing contrast therapy, right? Hot and cold combined, and I've been subscribing to that, and it's really amazing, and I'm super excited by the culture and the lifestyle that's really coming out of this, and the community of people that we belong to, essentially, that are all taking this to a completely different level, and you being so much a thought leader in the space. And we have to get back to your origin story, because it gets messy before it gets good, obviously. So let's do that for a second, because I'm sure plenty of people are like, okay, well, it was really tough, but boom, all of a sudden you're this big successful entrepreneur. So why don't you tell us what happened when you first started to create the mold, essentially, and go from that wood barrel to what you have today?
Yeah, so I was living in Castle Rock, Colorado, just 15 minutes south of Denver. I had the prototypes, and then my goal was like, let's test the market. So I started taking these barrels to as many fitness centers in a 50-mile radius and just driving around offering ice baths. I had, 300 pounds of ice in the back of the truck that I rented from Home Depot. So I'm branding for Home Depot, driving around offering ice baths. And then the barrels. And it was just so much rejection. I mean, nobody was interested in taking ice baths. And then there was this one gym, Modig CrossFit in Denver, and they were our first event. They were like, yes, set them up. And then after our class, we'll run people through cold. And they had never done that. They had never even heard of doing something like that, but they loved the idea. So we started getting a little bit of momentum, started taking them around to different events, predominantly after 5Ks, or there's a place called the Incline in Colorado. So I would take ice baths, set them up down there. So that was exciting. And then I built the website and just started marketing these things. And it was crazy because looking back, I mean, I was selling the oak ones for $2,500, and I mean, it was expensive, and we were a new company, but people were buying them because, again, there was nothing else out there on the market. So we started selling these oak barrels, and they were really expensive to produce, really expensive to ship across the country. But we were really the first direct to consumer cold therapy company, just based out of my garage, when I started. And once I realized we had enough momentum and we had something unique, I wanted to be able to scale this to provide cold to more people. And I knew I was going to have to go into some form of rapid manufacturing just to keep up with the demand. So that whole jaunt there was from 2017 to January of 2019. And in January of 2019, my wife and I started talking about, we have to move somewhere in order for us to continue to grow the business and get to a more advantageous place in the country where this type of manufacturing is happening. So, picked up my family. My wife was 8 months pregnant and we moved to Ohio, right in the heart of Amish country. And found some great manufacturing partners to help me bring this product to life. And it was very much ran out of money, and I would go find a client, sell an airplane, and that would give us a cash injection to keep going.
So you went back to airplane sales to get you through.
Yeah, just kind of just independently, I'd go back to old customers and sell their airplanes for them. And that would fuel it. And it was hard. I mean, I even did some weird stuff on the side just to keep things going. I started selling sponsorship for polo, with horses, polo matches. I was selling sponsorships for that, just all this random stuff just to keep sending cash to the company and also feeding the family. It was crazy difficult. And I remember the last time.
But it's so important. It's so important that you say all these things, because I think so many people have a misconception of, looking at a company like yours and saying, that was such a great idea, I could have done that, and not really understanding the sacrifice that goes into actually launching a product.
Oh yeah, it's wild. I remember I sold an airplane, and to get the I had to pay for the mold, and you got to pay for the molds up front, and they're tens and tens of thousands of dollars. They're roughly between $30,000 to $80,000 depending on, and there's multiple pieces to the mold, so that times 2 to 3, it's a lot of money. So I sold this airplane. And I remember having the conversation with my wife, like, hey, I know we just got this money, but we have to immediately pay for the molds for the product. And it was like, it was the scariest thing, because going into this new product, literally I spent the money on it and felt sick to my stomach. And I was like, that would have given us like at least a year to 2 years of like runway for my family. And I just invested it all into the business. And, yeah, I was sweating bullets. And I remember we built the landing page for the product, and then we launched it with no images, just a description of the product. Nothing had even been manufactured yet. And I did it that you could just buy an ice barrel and then it would deliver in like X amount of weeks. And I went to bed that night and I woke up and it was crazy. We started getting orders. And like by the end of the week, we had $19,000 in orders. And
Wow.
I was like, I knew in that moment, I was like, we're going to do this. Like, we got this.
Where'd you get the customers from, Wyatt? Where were these customers coming from? Did you have a database of people?
No database. So here's what happened. Early on when we built the website, I just optimized it around like the common search terms. So there was nothing on the market. If somebody Googled ice bath, nothing would show up except this one article and ice barrel. Like that was it.
Wow.
And so that
SEO,
people were just,
the magic of SEO.
SEO, that's where it came from. People were just looking up ice bath, finding ice barrel, and then they were willing to roll the dice on $1,000. So that was like really exciting. But then it was that moment of like, oh no, like I have to fulfill these orders and I don't even know like if the mold is going to work. But it was wild. We then ended up getting our first production run, and I mean, it was relatively flawless. Like we had no issues. I'm of the mindset that, instead of like, cutting and then measuring, like you measure 10 times and then you cut once. And that's kind of how we think about everything that we do. Like we're very, very precise, and we're always looking to shoot bullseyes. And so I was so like particular about the mold and the manufacturing process. And even if it would cause delays, which it did, like, I think I kept having to extend it out at least by like 4 weeks by the time I was able to officially deliver the first product. I just kept pushing it out because I was like, it's so much better to take care of frustrated customers up front and the challenges of delays than send out a bunch of product and have to take it back. Like it's not worth it. So we were so precise. It's very complicated to make the way that we manufacture a product is extremely precise and complicated. And it took us like, it took us like 3 weeks to dial in just the temperature of how long does the product sit in the oven? How long does it cool? I mean, and we went through so much material and testing before we brought it to market. So it was pretty wild. So then we got the first part, and then it was me and my wife packaging these things up out of our garage. And then I would have to drive them down to a buddy's warehouse, ship them from his dock. And it just started growing. Then we got our own warehouse, and then we moved through 3 warehouses in 1 year just as it scaled. So that was back in 2019 through 2020. COVID was good for our business because people were at home. They wanted something to do. They were wanting to take their health seriously. So COVID was a great year. Then in 2021, I got serious about the marketing of it all, and we 10x'd the business from 2020 to 2021. It was unbelievable. And then in 2022, we 5x'd the business, which was insane. And then we've already well surpassed what we did all of 2022. So it's just grown exponentially.
That's amazing.
Really amazing.
That's amazing. Really, what a great story.
I just based on this being the LivBtr podcast, I was so excited for you to meet Erica. All we talk about is how, things that we can implement, to live better. And that means something different to everybody. And I will say, I stopped drinking New Year's Eve of 22 just to challenge myself essentially for 23. And it was the biggest, I think, optimizing thing for my entire life that I've ever experienced was removing alcohol from my life. I mean, that's not so shocking or surprising, but the next thing that has leveled me up that I can honestly say, and Erica knows this, has been getting cold. So there's so much here because I think people like Erica who actually help people live better, don't even really understand the benefit of it. And it's intimidating to so many people, really, in my opinion, until you actually do it, because the concept or idea of getting cold to me is also seems uncomfortable or is daunting and not something you fill something up with ice, you fill up your ice barrel to get in the first time you're looking at it for a while, like, how the hell am I going to get in this thing? Right. And then you do it and you feel amazing. And then you're like, shit, I got to do that again. Right. And it's one of those things. And I think for anybody listening who has not done it, you're missing out on something that's relatively inexpensive that you can incorporate into your life and will change everything for the better. And I truly stand by that. And to answer your question earlier, Erica, there is an amazing podcast on this. Obviously, Andrew Huberman, who's all of his podcasts are great, but he has a recent one about cold. And they were talking about studies that essentially 11 minutes a week is kind of that magic number to get cold, essentially. And I'm sure everybody has their own preference, but in the study in his podcast, which I thought was great, uses that number of about 11 minutes a week, which probably breaks down, Wyatt, to what you're doing. I'm jumping in from 3 to 4 minutes, a handful of times a week.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I heard Dr. Mark Hyman, who I love too. He's a great advocate for a lot of like nutrition content and things like that. And he was just saying though, and he does the ice baths, but he was saying that some people he's known have had digestion issues because our digestion is heat, it's fire. And sometimes when we're plunging and we get too cold, it starts to slow down your digestion. And some people, it depends on your wiring, your makeup, right? Not everybody's going to have digestion issues, but have you found that to be true for some people, that it does mess with digestion?
It's interesting because we hear a lot, and I don't have like any science to back this up, just other than what our customers tell us. We have a lot of customers that say like whenever they get like an upset stomach, they immediately go take an ice bath.
It helps.
And it helps calm their upset stomach. Yeah. Now, I know that like our emotions are heavily tied to our digestion. So maybe it's this calming effect, this presence effect. There's a lot that probably plays into it, but it's definitely super interesting because it does start this anti-inflammatory process in the body. And so it does have these like calming effects. And then when you get out, you're reconditioning the mind to what real stress is, right? Ice water is stressful. Your perceptions generally aren't, right? And so a lot of times it's just this reconditioning. And we always encourage people, like, obviously we've heard it before, pick your hard, right? Having anxiety is hard. Taking an ice bath is hard. Pick your hard. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so if we can just like win that 3 minutes a day in the cold, like the rest of the day does become a lot simpler. It is the hardest part of most people's day.
Oh, that's so cool! I'm excited. I'm going to do it.
We're going to do it together. We're going to make that happen. I want to be with you when you do it your first time.
Okay, I'll wait till you come back. Maybe in August.
Yeah, for sure. So Wyatt, tell everybody where they can find your product, how they can get cold.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always actually tell everyone to start on our Instagram page. Like, it's so cool to see the community and such a diverse group of people around the world that are practicing cold therapy. Our content is very unique and it's curated by the community. That's one thing that's really important. We want to show real people that are utilizing the product. So go check out our Instagram page just so you can continue to get a feel for it. Then when you're feeling brave, go with the cold shower, start there, and then fill up the family bathtub because low barrier to entry, right? You can just fill it up, jump in. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be comfortable. Lying down is the worst position to take an ice bath in. But then as you build up a tolerance and you're ready for an ice barrel, that's another great step. And those can be found at icebarrel.com.
That's awesome.
Amazing. And when does the chiller come out? What's the timing for that? That's very exciting too.
Yeah, super exciting.
The old school ice, literally like getting ice and dumping it in, but it's exciting that you're going to have that option.
Yeah, so the chiller's coming out later this year. And we have a couple products that are coming out right before the chiller, which are super exciting. So that's all top secret coming out in the next 2 to 4 weeks. You'll start seeing some new products drop, which is super exciting, just to continue to make cold therapy more accessible. We serve a lot of adaptive athletes, and also I was surprised, but the elderly demographic is growing. And so we've innovated some products to support those communities as well, and really excited about that. So we have a lot of fun things coming this year. And I can't believe it's already June. This year is already flying by.
Yeah. You know what? A bunch of treatment centers and sober livings and all of that should really have access to this too. You know, I mean, it would probably help so many people. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It definitely will.
Thank you so much for being
Yeah, why? When are we hanging next, man? Well, I was just at Maz's house. Where were you on Saturday?
Oh man, I wish I was
we were
there.
jumping in and out of the barrels and the sisus and doing all the fun stuff. You weren't there. I'm upset.
I know. Soon. We'll have to do it soon.
Yeah. Well, Brian's dad was jumping in, man. So, which is amazing. Not surprising,
so
right?
Good. Yeah, not surprising at all.
Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you,
and
Erica.
keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right,
we'll
brother.
do.